Hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel and happy new year if you're watching this on the day I upload this. Today I am going to be talking all about my 2023 stats, and since I only just started my channel in September, you kind of are going to be getting somewhat of a surprise, I guess. I mean, you sort of know about how many books I read in a month since you've seen roughly what I do for the last 4 months, but I bet you're curious just how many books I did manage to read in the year of 2023. So here we go. I'm going to be showing you all of my stats on this really cool app called Storygraph. I do mostly use Goodreads. Obviously, you saw my obsession with the Goodreads Choice Awards, but I also love Storygraph because it breaks things down and gives you these fun little graphs to look at. They're cute, they're fun, and now I get to share them with you. I will also be talking a little bit about how to read more because that was actually a request I got more than once, but especially from one of my faves, Cressida Clarence 7420. She asked me how I managed to read so much when I said 18 books in a month was low. So I will be adding that at the end for those of you who are curious. Without further ado, here we go. The number of books that I read this year is 238 books. My public goal on Goodreads was 150 books this year because that's how many I read last year. At the end of the year, I was cheating and I kept starting more books because I just liked the number 150 and I thought it was great. My goal last year was 100. This year, my goal on Storygraph was indeed 200, and I'm glad to say I achieved it. So 238 books. I exceeded my goal by 38 books, or 119%. So let's check out how many pages that was. That is 93,150 pages. Ooh, a nice even number. How delightful. Apparently, my moods this year were mostly mysterious, adventurous, emotional, dark. Ooh, dark, really. Followed by lighthearted, funny, tense, then reflective, hopeful, and then slightly informative, a little challenging, a tiny bit sad, and a tiny bit relaxing. Yeah, no, that kind of sounds like my year. Goodreads also shows you the pace. This is based on how fast-paced the books were. So mostly I read medium-paced books, 70%. I read 22% of books that were fast-paced, and 8% of books that were considered slow. I bet those were all my cottagecore cozy fantasy books. They also break down page number of books. For those of you who are curious, 78% of my books were between 300 and 499 pages. 12% were over 500 pages, and 10% were below 300 pages. That's where all those graphic novels fit in. Mostly I read fiction, 97%, and 3% of my books were nonfiction. Hoping to get that up a little bit more next year, but this year was mostly just for fun. No one in the entire world is going to be surprised that the vast majority of my books, and they will count like multiple categories for books, so if this is not adding up, the math is not mathing. No, the math will not math. Don't worry here. The majority of my books were fantasy and romance. Romantasy, if you will. And no one is surprised to see this. I did read nearly, 70 young adult books? And nearly 60 contemporary books as well, but we hit almost 110 books for fantasy and romance, so that was the majority of stuff. We did hit, almost 40 in the mystery and thriller categories, and almost 30 in the historical category. And then after that, my most read were LGBTQIA+, literary books, magical realism. What is the difference between history and historical? Oh, I guess when I read some books that were actually about history. Sure. I did actually read some this year that were about events that took place in the past, especially down in the American South. I was trying to learn some stuff. And graphic novels, do not be fooled by that sports thing. Okay, that is romance. Sports romance. And then I threw in a few middle grade feminism, crime, speculative fiction, race, dystopian, sociology. Don't I sound smart? Psychology, politics, and health. All right, you will also see that my format, vast majority is print. I read 89,375 pages. Digital, I don't know if they're counting as pages or not. And then audio, I listened to 101.23 hours of audiobooks. And apparently one book I didn't enter with format. Whoops. My default is print. They're counting it as print. It was probably print. My most read authors are Lucy Score. Okay, that doesn't surprise me too much. Elizabeth Briggs, who you have not heard about at all, but you will be very shortly because all 4 of those books were in December. Ashley Poston, no one's surprised to hear this. Elise Kova, I don't think you heard too much about her, but I read half of her series. I'm going to pop it up here. It's the Air Awakens series. Cassandra Clare, I read the Infernal Devices series. Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I was reading like a debutante series from her, I think. Sarah J. Maas. I read the last 3 books in the third of that series. Oh my god, they broke me. Oh my goodness. I read 2 books from Viola Roth. I started her vampire series, which is very slow and comforting and nice to read before bed. If you have not tried it, the Blood Mercy series. It is slow moving, it is political. Some people love it, some people hate it. I find it very comforting to read before bed because, you know, the characters are going to end up together. And I like knowing that. I just like knowing. I also read 2 books from Lisa Jewell. One was last month, you'll hear about that, and 2 from Madeline Miller. I read her 2 big hitters, Circe and Song of Achilles this year, and thank you so much for all those tears, Madeline Miller. Here is what you're all probably really interested in seeing. This breaks down the number of books and the number of pages that I read per month. It does pretty much flow together. It's pretty obvious that the more books I read per month, imagine this, the more pages I read per month. It's shocking. I know. You're probably more interested in books than pages. I sure am. January, I read 21 books. February, I read 20. March, I read 11. This is when I hit a massive reading slump. I could not find a 5-star book to save my life. I was so miserable. And it continued into April when I only read 12, which was terrible because this was one of the magical readathon months and I was struggling so hard. All of those 12 books I read in the last week and a half. It was dreadful, but that broke me out of my reading slump, thank goodness. And May, I hit my stride again. So 21 books in May. June, not as great. I read 16 books. Then July, I read 22. August, I read, this is saying 22, but I swear it was actually 24. I think I might have forgotten to log some books. September, I read 22. That sounds right. October, I read 32. November, I read 18. And December, I read 21. 21? Did I really? Well, that happened by accident, but apparently I read 21 books in the month of December. I've just finished entering them today. So assuming that I do finish the last 2 books that I'm reading, which finishing the last 100 pages of 2 books is not really going to be a massively hard accomplishment in a day. Yeah, that is it for me. And ignore that star rating. You'll see that there's only 45 reviews down there. What I also love about Storygraph, and the reason that I don't link it or show anyone, is because I'm massively afraid that all my notes are somehow going to come out even though they're kept private. And this is where I keep all of my notes that I type as I'm reading and going along. I will mark pages with the little tabs, but this is where I keep all of my notes. Now, if you want to know my reading goal for next year, I don't know. I haven't set it yet. I'll probably do the same thing next year where I set it at 150 books publicly. And if you're listening to this and you know me, yeah, it's probably gonna be set at 200 on here, but I'm not gonna push. I'm going to make sure reading is fun, and I have a lot of stuff planned for this channel and a lot of house projects that we're trying to get done this year. So quality over quantity is my aim for next year. And yes, there are a lot of new things coming for this channel next year. You have already seen the first in the start of a new series, which I hope you will enjoy. That will be bi-monthly. There's going to be some new things coming as well, but I'm keeping them close to my chest as a surprise. And now let's talk a little bit about how I read this many books in a year. First of all, I'm just going to say it. You know, I am a stay-at-home mom. That gives me some leeway here and there, but my kid is pretty clingy and needy. She's not a low maintenance, go off and play by herself child. She will cry if I leave her alone in a room still. So there's that. Also, I am just a really, really fast reader. You give me an hour, I can read 100+ pages, no problem. I don't think that's normal. According to my husband, it's definitely not. So that kind of gives me an advantage right off the bat. I'm one of those people who, when I'm reading, the words will eventually go away if it's a good book and I can get lost in it, and I don't see them anymore. The words are gone and I'm just flying through the book and kind of just seeing the images, and it goes really quickly. I also don't have a massive social life. I tend to, get sick a lot and need a lot of rest, and I spend that time reading. I prefer reading to watching TV and anything else. So there's that too. But all that being said, one thing that I'm going to say is audiobooks. The first part of this is going to be about audiobooks. And if you're like, oh, no, I'm going to fast forward, hang on. I hated audiobooks up until the last couple years too. But you heard all those hours, okay? It adds up. I can get 2 or 3 extra books in every month just from audiobooks. And I could probably get in more if I really tried. Now, if you're saying, I hate them, here's why you hate them. You're listening to them at the wrong speed and you're listening to the wrong audiobooks. I want you to go into Audible and try a book that was designed by them as an audiobook. I tried one called Call Me Maybe, and it's literally 2 people talking on a phone back and forth to one another, and it got me into audiobooks because it's meant to be an audiobook. It's 2 people talking on the phone. It was adorable. It was hilarious. I loved Circe as an audiobook with Jessid Air. Amazing on audio. I swear to you, I think I loved that book so much because I listened to most of it. So those are some books right there that I can say give those a try. They're incredible audiobooks. Also, try thrillers. They're going to keep moving at a faster pace. They're going to keep you engaged, and you don't have to worry about the same character development or the same things that might be overheard as with other books. You're also probably listening to them at the wrong speed for you. I hear creators talking about how they're listening to audiobooks at 2x speed. I don't know how they do it. I can't listen to it. But 1 time speed is also too slow for me. Try and find the speed, not necessarily that you read at. My brain can't process things auditorily as fast as I read. Try and find the pace that matches as fast as you speak, or as fast as your internal monologue is. I have an internal monologue that's constantly going, and if I try and find what matches that, I still get all the inflection that goes along with the dialogue and all of the emotion that goes with everything, but it's the exact right pace to keep me from getting distracted because it's going so fast that I then have to rewind and I lose time that way. But it also is fast enough that I'm not distracted because it's going too slow and my brain wanders. Try those tips for audiobooks, and mostly I listen to audiobooks through Libby. Pop in your library card, you get them for free. I listen to them right on my phone and it's fantastic. Listen to them all the time. You're in the shower, audiobook. You're cooking, audiobook. You're cleaning, audiobook. You're doing the dishes, audiobook. You're on a walk with your dogs, audiobook. You're doing your hair and makeup, audiobook. You are in the car, audiobook. You get the picture. That is how I fit in a lot of teeny tiny bits of audiobook. It takes me a long time to get through an audiobook, but at the end of the month, it's an extra 2 or 3 books that I have tacked on to my tally. If you want tips on how to actually read faster, I don't speed read. I've never tried speed reading. That's not my thing. I think it takes away from the enjoyment of it. Sometimes I purposely slow myself down and break out of that world I was talking about so I can enjoy the language if it's particularly beautiful. I did that at times to reread passages with A Study in Drowning. If you want to read faster, first of all, read all the time. I don't spend time playing video games. I don't spend a lot of time watching TV. I don't go out a ton. If I have downtime, I'm reading. When I go to bed at night, I go upstairs an hour or sometimes 2 before I'm planning on going to sleep. I lay down, I play 1 game of Wordle, and then I read for at least an hour. Bam, that's at least 100 pages right there. I always have a book in my bag with me. I carry really large purses. If I'm in a waiting room, it doesn't matter if I'm waiting for 15 minutes. Bam, that's at least 20, 25 pages right there I just read. When you go out, you're always waiting somewhere, always have a book. If I have 15 minutes of downtime at home, I'm grabbing a book. I look at time as an opportunity to read. Little bits add up really, really quickly. There's no secret. If you see me and I'm not doing something else, it's reading. Tips for how to read more: read multiple books at a time. Always have multiple books going at a time and keep them going in multiple genres. Make sure they're really different. Always have a romance going, always having a romantasy going, always have a fantasy going, have something cozy going, always have a thriller and or mystery going. And I will explain why. When you're tired of one, when you feel like you need something else, you have something else to reach for. You're constantly having a rotation and you never get bored. You almost always can avoid slumps this way. I hadn't hit a reading slump in years until this past spring, thanks to this. Throw in whatever your favorites are, have a rotation of those genres, and you're not going to hit slumps. You're always going to have something you are in the mood for, and you're never going to be without a book to reach for. You're never going to have a point where you finish a book and you're like, oh no, I'm not reading anything. Gee, I guess I'll just watch a movie tonight. You're never going to have that. If you are sitting around and you really need to reach a reading goal and you feel like you need to read a lot really, really quickly, here are my big tips. Join a readathon. You will be super, super, super motivated. Okay, you're gonna have goals, you're gonna have reading prompts. It's gonna bring out the competitor in you. It is going to help. There's usually gonna be chats or something like that going on where you have other people to talk to and cheer you on. Go on YouTube, which I know you watch. Join reading sprints that have already happened. Watch 2 minutes or so of those like little down times where people are talking. You're gonna get bored real fast because it's not live anymore. Fast forward, sit down, read with everyone, okay? You feel like you're not alone. You feel like you're doing it. You have a timer to watch. You can time it to how much time you have. It really does help. You have a goal. It works. I promise you that it works. Also, use Storygraph or Goodreads or something else that allows you to log your books. And especially with something like Goodreads, you can follow me, you can join me. I will see what you're reading, you'll see what I'm reading, and you can log it as you go. It becomes something where you can say, hey, I read 100 pages today, and people see your progress, you can see your progress. And at the end of the year, you're gonna be like, wow, look at all this. Look at all these books I read. And it's an amazing feeling seeing everything you've done. You really get a sense of accomplishment, and that can be really, really motivating. Finally, remember all those books I was talking about? If you really need to read a lot fast, say you're in a readathon and you've got 1 day left and you need to read 3 books to finish it out and you have 3 prompts left, here is what you do. You have all those books going, you're gonna sit down and you are gonna read as fast as you can. When you feel like you're slowing down, you switch books. Immediately when you jump into that next book, you're gonna be faster reading that book because you are in a new world. You're excited to be in that new world. You're starting to get into that new world. You're going to feel yourself going again. When you feel yourself flagging, swap books again. You're going to be faster when you start that next book. Keep going for as long as you can at that pace. You get bored, you start getting tired, switch books again. It works for me all the time. When I really need to read a lot of books really, really fast, that's my trick. I have 3 books, 4 books even sometimes sitting in front of me, and I will just keep swapping them out. This is what I did with the Christmas books when I was absolutely dying with the Christmas overload, and I got through those books so fast, reading 25, 30 pages at a time, swapping books out. Was it slightly insane? Yes. But it was also really kind of fun. And you get competitive with yourself, and it becomes kind of a game. And anytime you can make it a game, it's going to be more fun. Then that's what it should be. Ultimately, if you're watching this, I want you to remember reading should always be fun. And if you are hearing these tips and thinking about them and going, gosh, that sounds like a lot of work, don't do it. If you're not enjoying it and this sounds like too much work for you, that totally defeats the purpose. This is clearly my main hobby. This is clearly the thing I love most in the world. I collect books. I love them. I keep up with the books that are coming out. I watch BookTube. I make videos now. This is my thing. So when I say this is how many books I read in a year, don't ever feel like you have to compete with that. Don't ever feel like you have to compete with anyone. If you read 1 book a month, if you read 5 books a month, as long as you're loving it, that's what matters. So please, please, all I want you to take away from this is if you got a tip that you think is going to help you read more because you want to read more, fantastic. But if this sounds insane, well, when it comes to books, I am a little book crazy. What can I say? I hope that you had a wonderful New Year's Eve. I hope you rang it in doing exactly the thing you loved. I promise you, I rang it in reading a book. I maybe had some champagne. My family tradition is to open our front door and to shoo out all of the bad from the previous year and welcome in all of the good for the next. I hope that you welcome in everything good and wonderful into the year 2024. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for being here. I will let you get back to your book, and I'll be getting back to mine. May you have the best 2024. Bye.